Do you feel like you're barely keeping your head above water? That no matter how hard you try, meaningful progress remains out of reach? Heather gets that. She battled an eating disorder for years before seeking help. Now in recovery, Heather is here to tell you that positive change is possible even when it doesn't feel that way. Join her as she shares openly about her struggles and small triumphs. Fair warning though, Heather doesn't hold back. Her candid story may trigger some. But for those wanting honesty, hope, and healing, this is 1% Better with Heather. The information and stories shared on 1% Better are based on host Heather's personal experiences with eating disorders and mental health challenges. Heather is not a licensed doctor, therapist, dietitian, or other health professional. Her advice and opinions should not be taken as professional medical advice. Please consult your physician or a qualified health provider regarding any medical or health-related issues. 1% Better also contains descriptions of eating disorders that may be triggering for some listeners. Discretion is advised.
Hey there, my little gappers, and welcome to 1% Better with Heather. Today, I have the amazing Anna Marie Green with me. Hello, Anna.
Hi, how are you? I'm glad to be here.
I'm good. So, let's just jump into it. I will get you to introduce yourself to the people.
Okay. Hi, guys. My name, like I said, she said, I'm Anna Marie Green. I am a licensed professional therapist and a professional intuitive, and I bridge psychology and energy work to help you simplify mental health solutions and make life and happiness easier, because I think happiness shouldn't feel so hard. And I work with teens through adults. And my specialty is anxiety, depression, and trauma work. I graduated with my master's degree in social work from the University of Pitt and became a therapist in 2020. I have my bachelor's of science in social work and a minor in psychology from St. Francis University. And I'm really excited to be here with you guys.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. Mm-hmm. I love free therapy, so let's get I love having a podcast. Free work. So when you say you are an intuitive mm-hmm. licensed therapist, what does intuitive mean? Just so everyone knows.
Yeah. So, everyone has intuition, right? So you have like intuitive skills, but for me, somebody who is an intuitive as like a professional title means that they've done some type of training and coursework and mentorship where they have learned to interact with, read, and do healings, which a lot of times you're learning like shamanic healings of other people's energy. So you're able to work with other people, you're able to help other people, as opposed to just using intuitive skills that we might have for ourselves, but you're actually training, you're in a way you're studying and things like that. Like, and I did a whole program to do that. So yeah.
Okay. All right. No, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I found you on the Instagram.
Yes.
Because you know Lauren LeDuc, and I saw you with their podcast, or her podcast, or are you guys all like part of one podcast?
No. I was on her podcast. I was a guest on her podcast. Yes.
She's lovely, and she was a yoga teacher for all you guys wondering who. So go watch that episode. Nice girl, super nice girl. So let's jump right into mental health.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is a huge umbrella. Like, there's a lot that goes under mental health.
Yeah.
So, if you don't mind, can we talk a little bit eating disorder and then non-eating disorder? Mm-hmm. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, let's just start with eating disorder, because that's my world.
Okay.
When someone's going through eating disorder recovery or involuntary eating disorder recovery, and they're trying to get through the layers of the healing, mm-hmm. how do we break through and, as I say, sit in the shit? Because no one wants to feel the feelings. That's why we have addictions.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? So how do you get people to sit in the shit?
So, one of the big things about being able to sit in the shit and to be able to feel your feelings is by essentially really paying attention to your body. So, one of the things about eating disorders is you've become so numb to your own body's signals, to your own, like, to the feelings and sensations. It's a separation of the mind, body, and soul. And so they're kind of all operating a little bit separately. And you'll find that with a lot of mental illnesses that people experience is that we're not one. We're not all parts of ourselves are working as one. But in order to sit in the shit, you really have to do the nervous system work. So if I have an individual who's coming to me with eating disorders, and depending on the specific eating disorder, my protocol is a little bit different. But one of the first things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be figuring out what kind of nervous system work. And so is it going to be breath work? Is it going to be, um, yoga? Is it going to be more like faster workouts? Because depending on how you're actually responding to stress, you're either going to want to do some type of nervous system work that's either hyper or hypo, so like faster paced stuff, or slower paced, slowing down, grounding, that kind of thing.
So how do we know what works best for us?
Yeah. So when you want to know what works best for you, you want to take a look at how are you responding to any kind of stress. So not even like you can remove it from, just the food situation, but like when somebody tells you bad news, how do you respond? Are you immediately like, I have to get up, I have to do something, I have to, add all these things to my to-do list, or I need to like start eating, that kind of thing? Or are you restricting? Are you not eating at all? Are you like having a hard time getting out of bed? Are you feeling like kind of like you need to shut down? You can't take in any more information. So the slower is going to be what we would call like the hypo. So like you're kind of shutting your systems down. You can't take in any more information. That's how your body is protecting itself. That's how your mind is protecting yourself. The reason you're able to even like restrict is because like even your digestive system will slow down. It doesn't want to energetically and physically. It's not digesting information as a way to as a safety protocol. When you're super busy and you're like, okay, I need to go, I need to figure out all these lists of things to do. And then you're also like, oh, I'm eating. And you're like, you're trying to like just fill yourself with stuff. It is another way to numb, but it's, you're taking in information. Like I need to take in as much information as I can in order to stay safe. So seeing how, and just like kind of observing yourself and how you respond, how your body is responding, especially because when we have these kinds of disorders where we are so disconnected from our body, it's a little bit easier to observe it as opposed to just like when we are more in tune, it's like we're in the middle of feeling it and everything. But in those moments, you're going to be able to say, oh, I noticed that like I feel really, really tired after I get bad news, or like I feel like I'm not hungry at all, even though I haven't eaten all day. And so that seeing just how your body, what are the body cues? Because your body will speak to you about how you're responding to stress in general. It's just a lot of times we don't see it until it's in these extreme debilitating situations. But if we can notice the smaller ones, we're going to be able to kind of stop it at its tracks and be able to do the work before it gets to the point where we're like, this is terrible, the worst case kind of scenarios.
Yeah, and I feel that can work. Stress is, well, my middle name should be Stress. And, but even for people who don't have an eating disorder, you can see it a lot in grief. If someone passes away suddenly or something explosive happens and we go into fight or flight mode, or some of us just live there, you really see, like, I'll use death, right? Either people are eating their feelings, not eating their feelings, running on fumes constantly, and having to keep and I'm this person, I know, eating disorder, not eating disorder. No time to think. Go.
Yeah.
How do we kick ourselves, because if we sit and think about it, well, shit, I might not leave my house for a month.
Yeah.
Right? So how do we know when it's like going to cripple us? And when, like, is there ever a good time to just be like, sometimes we just got to get through this huge thing, right?
Yeah.
To get to the other side.
Yeah.
But I know that there's like a wall eventually.
Yeah. So you can always, the part of the reason that, or what I tell clients a lot is like, for anxiety, for example, we think anxiety is this terrible, terrible thing, that it means that something is wrong with us. But I always tell clients, I was like, no, it's what's right with you. Anxiety is just a response, a survival strategy that essentially buys you time so that when something big happens, where it makes you feel emotionally unsafe, physically unsafe, whatever the case, energetically unsafe, you don't have the resources, the time, the ability to process those emotions, to let yourself feel them because the environment's not right, whatever the situation is. So you go into the survival mode. It buys you that time. Your anxiety is kind of saying to you like, okay, like I get it, but we're going to take care of things, but just make sure you come back and you process these feelings. But what oftentimes happens is that we just end up living out of that place because we just get comfortable. But that's when things can start to build and build and build. And so it is okay for you to say, you know what, I just need to get through this time right now and not think about what just happened and do what kind of gives me some type of routine. Because even finding like routine, finding something that allows you to get to the next day is going to help just like balance out your nervous system a little bit, so that if you're in talk therapy, for example, it's going to be more effective if you're doing things to calm the nervous system. If you're constantly like on the brink of a meltdown every single day, going and talking about it isn't going to make that huge of a difference. It's actually going to re-trigger you. So that's why, if you are in the middle of like, you brought up death, for example, if you're in the middle of that kind of transition of a loved one passing, let yourself feel the feelings, but you can always put in boundaries like, okay, I'm going to let myself cry, but it's going to be, from like after this point in time during the day, because I do have to keep living. I do have to keep going. I'll have clients do that who really struggle with processing their emotions. I'm like, okay, schedule it out. If you're a big scheduler person, schedule out when you're going to feel your feelings, when you can let yourself fall apart, and don't judge yourself during that time. Did that answer your question? I know I can tend to tend to. Okay.
No. And maybe not everyone goes through death, but I remember my divorce. You're just in this, everything's like, you can't, probably messed up my kids, but like didn't want to mess them up more.
Yeah.
And I would just go cry in the shower because I didn't want them to see me break. And it's just like everything's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, my poor shower needs therapy.
That's where I do my crying too. And especially, so my partner, my daughter's father passed away when she's 1.5. And that's where I did. It's okay. It was, it was 5 years ago now, but that's where I did all my crying. And like, I had to do the same thing where I had to schedule out like, okay, we're going to let ourselves fall apart during this, like from this time to this time, there's going to be no judgment, because I really didn't know how to move forward. I had never experienced a loss like that before. And so because I had never experienced it before, there was my subconscious, my brain didn't have any survival strategies that were going to possibly help with the pain I was feeling. I kind of went in a free fall. And in order to help myself just like function, I had to put boundaries in. I was like, okay, we're going to make sure that like we eat at this time. We're going to make sure like we'll leave this time for like crying and falling apart and whatever. But we're going to make sure we go outside for 15 minutes a day, because otherwise I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to do anything. So that in that case, I needed some of those boundaries to keep me just one day at a time. So I understand that, what you're saying.
Yeah. And again, I'm very sorry.
It's okay.
It's so hard. And as moms, right? Like, I will say it gets easier the older that they get, right? Like my kids are 18 and almost 18, almost 15. Yeah. They don't need mommy as much, right? I'm just annoying. Well, I was annoying to them right from day one. But like they have lives. Like they're
Yeah.
becoming human. Like
Yeah. They're a bit
adults.
more autonomous. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But when they're small and you have to like keep it together all the time, it's hard.
Yeah.
And a lot of moms, I think all moms need therapy, actually.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
There's so much social pressure and maybe family pressure and keeping up with the Joneses pressure, social media pressure, like
Yeah.
pressure everywhere. What do you say to those moms who are just like, no, I want to give my kids everything and I don't want, I want to keep them in, as I call it, like a bubble, Disneyland, right? Because if you didn't grow up in Disneyland, that's all you want to give to your kids. How, like, what would you say to the moms who are just like, no, I have to be the mom of the year all the time?
I always tell moms to let themselves be messy. Motherhood is the one area where I would say, well, actually, I believe all areas are okay in your life to be messy. I always tell people, I'm like, I am a messy bitch. I feel my feelings. Sometimes I, don't always know why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, but like I had to sit with it. But with motherhood, it's important to be able to let yourself have your feelings and your kids to even see you having your feelings, because it gives them permission, especially with the younger your kids are, the more energetically attuned they are to you. So and there have been studies done where a baby or a toddler could be across the room from their parent, and if the mom has some type of stress response, the baby's heart rate will go up, just like the mom's, because we're biologically attuned to our caregivers. So you might think, and I was the same way, that you're hiding these things from your kids, that they're not aware of it, like that you have to be mom of the year, you have to keep it together. Your kids are unconsciously picking up on it. And then all that happens is that their bodies are unaware of what's going on, what is the threat. And so then they're unable to focus. They struggle regulating their emotions because they don't truly understand or see what's going on. So letting them see you cry or have a bad day and just explain, I'm just feeling sad, I'm just feeling angry. It gives them permission to also have those emotions. And you're showing them, as opposed to just telling them, how to emote healthily. My daughter, I grew up in a household where my parents were not very emotional. I know that they loved me and all of our siblings, but emotions were just not something that we did well in my house. And my mom the only emotions she let herself have were being of service and always saying yes and never having any boundaries, and then blow ups because she never had any boundaries and this extreme anger. And so I didn't want that. I didn't want anger to be this negative thing, and I didn't want sadness to be this negative thing. So, my daughter and I, we have a rage ritual. So if we're having a hard time, we'll take a plastic wiffle bat, or we'll take a broom and we'll hit the pillows on our bed and talk through what's making us angry. That's not hurting anyone else. It's showing her that it's okay to emote your emotions and take action, as long as you are doing it in a way that is honoring you and it's not disrespecting or hurting other people. And it gives her the space to feel safe with me, to feel angry at me, or to feel angry about something in front of me. And so that's why I say, let yourself be messy. If you're, having a day where you're just I need to get out, or I need this boundary, let yourself have that, because you want to try to reframe it as what would you want for your children? Would you want them to hold all their emotions in and feel guilty and shame for having feelings, for being a human? Show your kids it's okay to be human. And it's not gonna, I think a lot of moms struggle with if I show that I am human and I show that I don't love every single waking moment of motherhood, or I'm stressed out, or I don't love my job, or I'm not exactly where I want to be, that means their kids will see them as less deserving. A lot of moms have this wound of not being worthy of love that we are actively working out while we are raising children. And so letting yourself be messy is also you nurturing your own inner child. It's helping you show up more as a present mom. I could talk about this all day, because I have lots of moms that are just I feel like I have to be perfect. I feel like I have to do all this stuff. But really that pressure to be perfect is about wounds that you have that are not fully processed from growing up, specifically inner child stuff that's now coming up as you're raising your own children.
Yeah, and maybe that's why those places where you can go and take a bat to dishes or axe throwing or whatever make a gazillion dollars, right? And my son started football, and I was just like, dude, I know you don't like me. Like, go take it out on the football.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, just go. But yeah, it's so. I don't think enough moms talk about this, and sometimes, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's okay not to like your kids because sometimes they're jerks because they're humans and it's just like, oh, and they're the clone of you, so that even sucks more. Right? When you're talking to your mini self.
Yes.
And it's okay not to be like okay, and it's just so much in this day and age. And I love social media, but I think social media,
it adds pressure.
I'm so glad I'm a Gen Xer. I really am. But when you're talking about moms, and when you're saying to your child, like, let's go into the bedroom and you can beat the crap out of the pillow, that is so freeing, because my mom is a lot like yours. Stuff it down, doormat.
Yes.
Right? And there is nowhere else for that to go. You are going to be like the biggest volcano known to man.
Yeah. And you end up kind of subconsciously passing down your wounds to your kids when you do that. Like, my mom has this deep fear of being seen as like unworthy and like bad. That's why she is yes, of course, lacking boundaries. She didn't want us to withdraw our love to her. And that was something that I really had to process and work through, even though it wasn't really my wound. It wasn't mine, but I was processing it. And, I took it on as I grew up, because that was what was modeled to me. That's what it felt to be energetically connected to my mom. And we're always energetically connected to the people that we love. There's just that level of like, you're going to pick up on, okay, something is off. And that's where, everyday intuitive skills, you're going to feel it, and it's going to impact what you're processing, how you are dealing with stuff. And moms take it all on too. So
and my poor mom, but like, even I was taught, don't bitch. Don't bitch about it. Don't bitch about it. And just smile, right? Everything's fine. Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
And being the rebel that I am, I'm not that person, because I just like lose my mind all the time. And she always would say to me, like, you gotta, like, people are going to start talking about us, and you live in a gossipy family or whatever, right? And I was like, well, at least you got something good to talk about.
Yeah.
But like, it's hard, like, to break that generational trauma, and having the permission to break the trauma.
Yeah.
So how do we get to that point of just like I know how I got there, because I was like, I don't care what anyone thinks about me, right? So, but not a lot of people are me. So how do you get to that?
So getting to that point, a lot of people feel, and a lot of people do, they feel like they need that permission. But the best thing that you can do is finding a space where it is removed from like those family influences. So whether it's therapy, whether it's like, a group that you go to, or you move away, whatever the situation and dynamic is. For me, I moved away. I moved like 3 states away. And not even like consciously. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I want to get away from my family. But now looking back, I'm like, oh, okay. But you want to find a space for yourself, because what that's going to allow you to do is to really look at the dynamics with your family. And because breaking generational wounds and traumas and, curses, however you phrase it, however you see it, it's going to make you very, very uncomfortable. Your nervous system and the cells within your body are programmed to operate with that generational trauma, with that mindset, with you're like, you have been prepped and primed your whole life, because that's how most likely your house operated. And, in order to survive, in order to receive love and affection, in order to, not get in trouble. So you're like, you had to live within those rules, within those boundaries. And so your nervous system is prepped for that. So facing this work, facing the issues, and then overcoming them is going to require that discomfort, but then leaning into some of those nervous system stuff to retrain your mind. Our brains are able to learn new things, make new neurological pathways to unlearn the things that you have learned, essentially, and to be able to say, this was not okay. You can understand why people have made the choices that they made, but you can say, this is not okay, and this is not okay for me anymore. And that's really what you spend time doing. So for me, I ended up moving away. I ended up really like taking a step back and looking at the dynamics of what I grew up in. And it took me a little while to get to the point where, my mom and I, our relationship is so great now. But before, it was painful for me. It was painful for her, because I was setting these boundaries, and there were no boundaries that existed. When I grew up, being angry with someone you loved was like basically not loving them. You saying that you don't love them because you're angry about something that they did, and speaking out and saying like, this is not an okay way to treat me, and I'm angry about this, was basically saying, I hate you and I never want to talk to you again. And so it was very unsafe for me to feel angry, for me to put boundaries in. And that was something that I had to work on with my nervous system, and eventually I was able to work on it with my mom. And our relationship is so much better because of it. But it does take that stepping back, and it does take that that nervous system work. I also did energy work with it, which made like a world of a difference, because that helped me see past some of the gunk that was in the way, that was preventing me from seeing things as like a problem. I was very, very resistant when I started therapy. I was like, I love my parents. My parents are great. They did a great job. I had a happy childhood. And when I tell people, whenever I hear you say that in therapy, I know that there's something that you're not willing to face. And so a lot of times we'll approach it energetically, so we can bypass that ego and we can start working on it.
Yeah. And so for the people who maybe can't move 3 states.
Yes. Yes.
What? I'm not judging. I'd move. How many states are in the States? 50, 51, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how do we set up those boundaries? Because it took me into my 40s to say, listen, I can't listen to this crap anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not strong enough to listen to the shit anymore. Yeah. And the reason why I'm crazy is because all you loony bins praise me. So, but not everyone, again, is me and can say that. So how does one start small?
Yeah.
And not upset, because we don't want more trauma in someone's life.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
You don't have to say, hey mom, I'm setting up a boundary. But how do you secretly set up your own boundary?
Yeah.
For whoever's your
the smallest step you can actually take is first by setting boundaries with yourself. If you're struggling with setting boundaries with other people, most likely there are boundaries internally that you're not keeping. So, let's say that you really struggle with saying no to people, or particularly like a parent or something like that, because you're afraid that it's going to disappoint them. And you just let yourself word vomit into a journal of all of the fears that you have of this one behavior. And so then I want you to find, where is it that you're breaking your own boundary, or this boundary that you want to have with your parents? Where are you breaking it? Are you actually sharing more than you need to? Are you not honoring which ways are you not honoring yourself? Because that's what I found also with myself as well as with clients, is we're breaking the boundaries first, and then that sets the stage for them breaking it. Once you start the small step of identifying that and then starting to keep boundaries for yourself, it's prepping your nervous system, it's prepping your mind to be able to start setting small boundaries with the people around you. So like, instead of being like, Mom, I'm setting this boundary, maybe it's your mom always keeps you on the phone for like 2 hours, and like you just don't have it in you to talk on the phone for 2 hours every single day or whatever the situation is. Then you say, okay, my time limit is going to be like 30 minutes. And then at the 30-minute mark, give yourself like an out, like, hey, Mom, I have to go to the bathroom, or I have to do this. I'll talk to you later, and figure out what it is that you need. Even if it's like a tiny white lie or whatever it is, but give yourself that permission to keep your own boundary. Because I know for some people, it's like to say, Mom, I don't want to talk on the phone anymore. Like, it's 30 minutes, I got to go. That's like, I would never say that to my mom. So it's a lot of times like, hey, I'm going to let you go because I have A, B, and C to do, or I'm tired. And I like, so, and explain that. And then allow yourself to like, okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'll talk to you later. And those are kind of small steps you can take without being really abrasive. Because I think some people think that boundaries have to be like, no, I'm not doing this because, and where they over explain. You don't need to explain, like over explain as to, and nobody, you don't have to. I think also people really take boundaries as like, you're putting boundaries in because something is wrong with this person, or this person is mean, or this person is bad. Boundaries are beautiful, beautiful things, and they're for you. They're not for anyone else. They're not punishment. They're actually a way to sustain your relationship, because you're saying, I care about this relationship so much that I want to make sure that it's preserved. And the only way to do that is by making sure I feel safe in this relationship.
I love that, because like I say, it took me a long time to know that I matter, my feelings matter, and my mental health, lack thereof, is important.
Yeah.
And starting small. So what happens if, okay, let's say some of us are scared of our mother.
That's okay. I understand.
Is it easier to start with people, and I don't want to say like don't matter, but don't make a big, huge impact. Like start smaller with like the PTA asks you to bake some cupcakes and you say no. Is it easier to start that way?
It is. Yes, it is. It's easier to start that way. It also, I would say, is important for you to be really honest about the fact that you're afraid of your mom, or you're afraid of saying no to your mom, and really listing out what are the worst case scenarios and maybe like why you feel this way, because it's also going to pinpoint a time frame of when the original wound took place and give you a direction on what to focus on in therapy or what to focus on in your own healing work, instead of kind of just being like, yes, I'm afraid of my mom and that's just it. And it's just because, this is this. It's going to give you way more information, and that's going to also help you in the long run to be able to eventually put these boundaries in, because you're going to work through and process those original wounds.
Okay. I get that. Okay. So what happened? So I had a friend over today for tea who is, I don't know, in a spot.
Okay.
Had some stuff happen to her. And what do you say to somebody who just says, and this came out of her mouth a couple times, it's just me. I'm just unlovable. People just don't like me. And I'm just going to have to be miserable for the rest of my life. Because her daughter moved from like Canada to Texas. Let me tell you, that's not down the street.
No.
So
no, it is not. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, so for somebody who's feeling that way, one of the first questions I'll ask is like, when do you first remember feeling that way? Like when was the first time that you remember feeling unlovable, people just don't like you, and you're going to be miserable? So you and asking yourself that question instead of like, well, why do you feel this way? Because a lot of times the answer is going to be like, well, look at what so-and-so is doing, or so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that. And that's kind of going to get you caught up in some stuff that it's not surface level, but it's not the actual like offending, like the thing that gave you this mindset, this belief system. So I always want to ask, how old do you feel? And when is the first memory you have of this? And let's explore that, because that, and I hate saying like that kind of response as if it's like this whatever, but when I'm hearing that as a therapist, I'm saying, okay, So they learned that they're not lovable for some reason. There is a part of themselves that they feel is like an enemy, like of what they want. So them being themselves naturally feels like it is a threat to their survival. And these are individuals who can also a lot of times end up getting very down, where they have more of those depressive cycles, because there's a part of themselves that they view as a threat to their physical survival. And a lot of times these individuals, they kind of got stuck in one of the developmental phases. So when we're growing up, when we're kids are very egocentric. That's part of a natural development phase. You know, everything's about them. They can't separate themselves from like things that are happening in the world. So like if somebody, like their bus driver had a bad day, internally they might be like, oh, maybe it was because I did X, Y, and Z. It has nothing to do with them, but they are unable to think that way. And that's normal. When there is an adult who has those kinds of thoughts, it's like, I'm unlovable, I'm just not likable, I'm always going to be miserable like this. It tells me that they experienced some type of trauma in those earlier years where they kind of got stuck there, and they learned to survive by essentially mirroring what other people want or numbing out. Like their survival strategy is what got them through, but they never went back and processed it. And it's not that it's their fault. They might have not been in an environment they probably didn't even know that there was a thing. But that's really what I'm hearing with that. So you always kind of want to ask yourself, like, how old do I feel?
Okay. So what do you say to people when, because I'll say, dude, you need some freaking therapy. And coming from the person in therapy, you need a whole lot of it. And I have a family member who looked at me and was like, that's not our way. We don't do therapy. I'm like, well, most of us are in therapy. You're the only one that's not. So get on board here, my friend. And what do you say to those people? No, I just can't. I can't, because there's some stigma around it, or like family, generational. Blah, blah, blah.
I come from a family who does not, well, like my parents they didn't believe in therapy. Like even my dad, I don't think that I could get him to go to therapy, even though I'm a therapist now and he's like very supportive of my work. So when I have people who are like, no, that's just not what we do, they don't think it's going to help, you know, I ask them what they think therapy is, like for them to describe it to me. Because a lot of times there is this stigma of like, oh, you only go there like when something is wrong with you. But in reality, those same people are using the people that they love unconsciously as their therapists. So
crazy.
Yeah. So a lot of times, and I'll make that connection. I'll say, you know, what you're going to do in therapy is essentially what you're doing with me, but it's not going to put all this pressure on our relationship, you know, because it's going to it's removed. You're talking to somebody who was removed from the situation, and there is nothing better than somebody who is completely removed. And so I will make that connection for them. And I'll also ask them, like I have a friend who, she was just like, therapy just doesn't work for me. I don't think that it's helpful. She did therapy for like 4 sessions. And she was like, I just feel like I don't really talk about anything with my therapist. I don't have anything to talk about. And so I'll say, okay, what are you afraid of talking about? What do you avoid talking about, that you end up just talking about, like what you ate this week, or like what happened at work, or you end up talking about coworkers. And that, so you always kind of want to go into the back door a little bit, into when you're making these definitive statements of like, therapy doesn't work for me, therapy is just not what we do, kind of digging a little deeper. Well, you know, why essentially, like why do we feel that way? But yeah, for loved ones, I'm always just like, therapy is essentially just like talking to somebody. It can be kind of like venting, but then you can learn how to fix some of these problems, instead of like when you vent to your best friend is going to have a biased opinion, and they might not even know how to navigate that situation, and then they're stressed for you. It adds these layers and pressures to your close relationships that's not going to happen in therapy. Your therapist's goal is for you to live your best life and to feel the best. So it's also, yeah, you can frame it like that. Was that helpful?
Yeah, no. I also think, because I think, well, you don't want to see what's in front of you.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
it's the bury your head in the sound, right?
Yeah.
It's everybody else, not me. But
Yeah.
eventually,
Yeah.
not everybody on the planet can be wrong.
Yeah. And it's just, it's one of those things where I think also a lot of people are just like, I can handle it all on my own. I can do this all on my own. But if you look at humans in general, like say, okay, you don't believe in the psychology or the whatever of it. When you look scientifically at humans as a whole, we're social creatures. We need community to survive.
Mhm.
And so just think of it as expanding your community. And like, yeah, because honestly, it's something that's like, I think everyone should at least experience therapy once, because it's just a really great place to also see yourself. Like therapy mirrors to you and shows you, oh, hey, this is an issue, or like I didn't think about it this way, I didn't see it this way, because we're so in our own survival strategies, we're so in the thick of it that a lot of times we can't see past we can't see past our stress.
So why is it so difficult for us to look inward? Why is it so difficult for us to be like, hey, it's me. I'm the problem. Taylor Swift. Right? I was like, oh my God, my theme song. Right when that song came out. I should play that when I walk into a room.
So it's difficult because a lot of times to admit that we are the problem is essentially like our ego is like, oh, we're the threat. So, and like your ego isn't going to want to destroy yourself. You know what I mean? So it's easier to blame other people. It's easier to blame something else because it's also a level of like, I don't have to change. So your ego is in control. That's even one of the things that can keep you stuck if talk therapy isn't working for you. It's most of the time because your ego is really in full control of what you're talking about, how deep you're going, what you're actually willing to face. There are layers to the ego where there are even like traumas where your ego's like, yeah, we can talk about this trauma. This trauma, we know how to survive talking about this trauma. We have like our little strategies. And so it's still might not be getting to like the root issue. But so your ego is not going to want to face something where you would essentially, it would create a super drastic change because the ego is like, no change. We like safety. We like predictability. Or where essentially you're saying that you are your own threat. And like facing this might mean that you're breaking kind of a layer within yourself. Like whether it's feeling grief, like our minds and bodies will avoid grief and really, really heavy emotions that a lot of times come with our own shit. You know, the reason that you're having all these issues in relationships, or like maybe nobody seems to like you, or, you know, whatever it is that you're saying is like, it's other people. It's just, I'm just doomed to be miserable, whatever the situation is. There is a tremendous amount of grief and pain there that your mind and your body does not want to feel, does not want to have to process. And so it's a lot easier to stay in that survival strategy of blaming everyone else, of just, you know, being miserable, and which is essentially just adapting or mirroring or being a chameleon essentially, and not feeling yourself, than it is to allow yourself to feel that pain again, that original trauma.
So what would you do with somebody who is like, okay, it's me, let's do this?
Yeah.
What's like the number one top tip that you could give somebody right now to just crack a little, like just a little crack at themselves, to feel a little bit better, like take the boulder off their chest, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So my number one tip is if you can do some type of like energetic healing meditation or like a breathwork session, that's going to help you feel immediate relief and just take that heaviness off of you a little bit. It's also going to make it easier for you to actually talk about your stuff. So whether that's like, there's several different breathwork stuff that you can do. Like if you just go on YouTube and you look up like breath work, whatever, you can do some of those patterns. Energy healing wise, my favorite to do is a forgiveness, energetic healing, which is kind of like a cord cutting. And but so essentially you call forward, whatever this feeling is. So you'll let yourself feel it for like 5 seconds. And then in the meditation, you go to a place of nature, however you're doing your meditations, you're going to call forward essentially whatever is at the root of that feeling. And so if you're somebody who your biggest intuitive sense is like seeing, which that's what mine is, you're going to kind of see what some of those things are. And so you'll say like, I forgive you, I love you, I release you. You're still breathing deeply. And what it's doing is it's helping your mind, it's helping your body reset. But that's one of my clients' like favorite healings to do. And it's one of my favorite ones to administer. And it gives you that immediate release. And it's also allowing you to start forgiving, because forgiveness is part of the process. And a lot of times we think that forgiveness has to be just with the people who have hurt us, but there's levels of forgiving ourselves as well that are going to show up and that are really important in your healing journey.
I love that one right there, because as someone who is, like I always say, don't have feelings, I have a couple, but I never want someone to feel bad. So if I hurt someone's feelings, I'm always like, I'm sorry. And if they said, okay, I forgive you, everything. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. So or if they hurt my feelings and I say, okay, I forgive you. Okay. But forgiving myself. Yeah. No, I don't like guilt and shame. Guilt, shame, the 7 horsemen that are always over here. Like they're just uninvited all the time, but they keep showing up, the worst house guests ever. So what, to forgive yourself, if you would forgive someone else, forgive yourself. Yeah. Right. Exactly. And we're our own worst enemy, right? Yeah. Like I don't need any help having guilt and shame. I'm good. I got it for the whole planet.
It's hard. Guilt and shame it's one of the stickier emotions that we see. We carry it around. And a lot of times, we forget that forgiving ourselves is such a huge part of it. But even if it was say your 8-year-old self decided to wear something like polka dots with zebra stripes or whatever to school, and then they got teased that day. And then, as a result, you changed the way that you didn't want to wear as much color, as much pattern. There is multiple layers of needing to forgive yourself. The forgiveness of I chose to wear this. And so I put myself in this danger. And then you abandoned yourself by making that change of I decided I'm not going to wear as much color so I can fit in. And so there's multiple layers of self-forgiveness that comes into healing and healing work that a lot of times people just don't think about it or talk about it. But it's so, so profound.
And inner child work, you talk a lot about inner child work. Yeah. It's
a doozy.
Yes, it is. And something that I've learned through all my therapy, it's not, I'm not going to lie about it, it's not fun, right? But we're always, and maybe I'm wrong, you can tell me this, what we're looking for is someone who we are, or I guess I can only speak for myself, who I am now, not as a child. I needed the adults in my life to be me and come in and kick some ass. Yeah. And it didn't happen. I guess that's why I'm the way that I am right now.
Yeah. Right? Absolutely. And so, but that's a really powerful thing though, because that means you can kind of go back and reparent those parts of yourself that are having fits, that are struggling to process certain emotions, that are being triggered. You're already the person that you needed when you were younger. And so that's one of the really powerful parts about inner child work, even though it is intense. That's the best way that's the best way I can put it. And remembering that, when you are overwhelmed with, you're oh my gosh, there's just so many parts. I have a lot of clients who had really, really severe childhood traumas. And I always tell them, I'm you're exactly who you need to be to do this work and to show up for that inner child. So that way she doesn't feel unsafe, and it doesn't feel unsafe being in your own body. Because that's another big component to that.
Yeah. I think that's, and I call experts and people who have just lived life and gotten out guides, right? And that's why I love this doing what I do, because I get experts, I get guides,
Yeah.
I get experts who have lived. So that's even more of a bonus,
Yeah.
right? I really like that part of it, and it's a long road to any sort of healing, recovery, whatever, right? Just dealing with whatever happened with us.
Yeah.
But I think that's why I went a different way with my kids.
Yeah.
Was I taught them, I'm like, like,
Yeah.
we're not going to do it this way. But when you get guides and experts, you get the both of the best worlds.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That's why I chose to do things differently with my daughter too, is I was just like, I don't want her to feel this way when she's older. And I'm somebody, I'm like, I don't want it to be so hard for her to feel happy, which is where I was at by the time that, I turned 25. I was like, why does happiness feel so hard? So, and that was one of the things that inspired me. I forget what age I was when I became a therapist, but that was one of the things that inspired me to go this route.
Well, and I really appreciate you, because I think listening to your story
Thank you.
and going into the line of work that you went into, we never want people to feel like we did, ever.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a reason why certain people take certain paths.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, put their story out there. So for that, I'm very, very thankful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I want to talk about your Breaking Through the Cycle course.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes.
So tell us all about that. What's that? Let's breaking through. What are we breaking through now?
So you're breaking the inspiration to create this course was I've been working with a lot more teens recently in the last couple months. And one of the things that just constantly came up for the teens, for their parents, is just like these cycles of like really, really intense anxiety or really intense depression. And they kind of felt helpless. They were like, I know that it's probably going to come again, either at the same point in like time of year. Some people really struggle with seasonal depression, but I wanted to give you guys, or give people, the resources to be able to not have to be in those cycles anymore, to not fear like, okay, is this stressful situation going to be the thing that sets off my anxiety for the next 2 weeks? I had lots of teens who were just like, I one test and I could be down for the next like 3 weeks because it was just so intense and so stressful. And so it's teaching basic intuitive skills, which, anyone can do them, and teaching you guys how to use them in a capacity that's actually going to help with your mental health. So I talk about, here's like the energetics of what's going on. This is why this helps. This is how you can use it in a daily practice, in a weekly practice, or just whenever you want to. There's lots of resources in it. And I go through the different kind of like layers. So I see mental health as a energetic, a physical, and a cognitive thing. There's 3 parts of it. And so in that course, I'm giving you those resources of like, okay, we're going to start on the energetic. So there's energy healings, there's guided meditations, then there's breathwork sessions and somatic exercises to help with the nervous system, so that way when you're ready to start reprogramming different thought processes, or you're ready to start talking about some of the things, and like affirmations. Teens love affirmations. Like all of my teens are like, well, I've been trying to say these things and I just still feel stressed. And I'm like, that's because you're trying to do that when your nervous system is still like, we can't live, we can't function. Right. So it preps you so that affirmations then are something that are way more helpful. But yeah, so it's really, I call it like my intuitive mental health 101, because it's teaching you how to use these basic skills that a lot of people know already, because a lot of people are really into like manifesting. And I tell people, I was like, you want to use this for your mental health first, because mental health touches everything in your life. And so then if you want to manifest something in particular, it's going to come a lot easier if you are able to feel happy and you're able to enjoy things. So that is the gist of my Breaking the Cycle course.
I think that's amazing, because I feel bad for teenagers now. I'm so glad.
No. They have a lot of pressure, and they're constantly stimulated. They're very ungrounded. And then they're taking TikTok is something where like they're constantly consuming so much information. So then they're confused as to what actually works. And they're also tuned out to their own body because they're like, well, this worked for this person and I want their life, instead of tuning into their own intuition. So this also helps them to come back to themselves, and know what works for them.
Yeah. Like I say, I love social media, but it's too much.
Yeah.
It's God, 50 years from now, people are going to be studying us.
Yeah.
Right? It's too much information too fast. It really is.
Yeah.
And when you can't slow down your brain and you're constantly, does that put you in fight or flight? Like when you're just constantly going, like your cortisol levels got to be, I didn't want to know what my cortisol levels are.
Yes.
Probably break it.
And taking in that amount of information also, it causes indecisiveness. It causes an inability to focus, to retain information. So like we're seeing an increase in people not being able to just like remember things because we're constantly taking in information and it's struggling to like integrate, as well as like screen times, and it's impacting our sleep, which impacts all of that other stuff as well. But yeah, taking in information like that, it's a survival strategy. If you're stressed out and your body is like, we're in fight or flight, it will try to take in more information. That's why doom scrolling is so kind of like addicting, for lack of a better word.
Doom scrolling? Is that when you just constantly scroll?
Yeah, you're just scrolling. You're on the phone. You don't even realize you've been on it for 45 minutes. You're just watching Reel or TikTok after TikTok, and you're taking in that information, and it's giving that like one shot of dopamine, but like you're so disconnected from your body because you're like there. And that's something else to remember is like, our brains can't tell the difference between a lived experience and a non-lived experience. So if you're constantly consuming visuals, your brain is like, it can sometimes like take you there kind of, and then your body's reacting as if it is like experiencing the thing. That's why like sometimes binge watching stressful shows can be really, really hard on your nervous system and really, really hard on your mental health, because your body is reacting to those stressors because of those visuals that it is digesting. That's a big thing for littles, like my daughter. If she watches too much TV, she is so ungrounded and out of her body. Regulating her emotions is hard, focusing is hard, retaining information. So it's really, really important if you have littles to try to, contain their screen time, just because, or if you're going to if they're going to use screen time, do grounding exercises afterwards.
Well, I get that. Because again, Gen Xer, all my cartoons were like My Little Pony and He-Man. He-Man, there was always a message. But now I watch some of the stuff my kids watch, and I'm like, what? Who smoked a bunch of crack before they did this? Right? Like it's awful, but it's so stimulating. Like it's just like give yourself a seizure kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, this is garbage. But I can understand. I didn't know that part where like your brain can take you there. Well, I've gone on a lot of trips, let me tell you. For someone with no passport, I have gone all over the world. So, yay.
Yeah.
That is...
Yeah.
That's a lot. And I get the addiction of it, which is, I think it is an addiction. Because people getting up in the middle... Is that why people get up at 2 o'clock in the morning or like, oh, I can't sleep, I need to look through my phone?
Yeah, so there's a couple reasons that can happen. So if your sleep is getting like disturbed, like you're waking up in the middle of the night, it's telling me that your body wasn't grounded enough when you were like going to sleep, so it's not like fully relaxing. If there is an addiction to some type of to consuming information, something woke you up from your sleep, whether it's stress, like people who are stressed about things a lot of times will wake up a lot of times because their body can't truly rest. And so then they'll just take in more information because it's that coping mechanism, it's that addiction. And the brain wants to be busy. Otherwise, it risks thinking about the things that it's stressed about. It risks facing those problems. And also, it can be people talk about shows or things like that being cathartic. So what's actually happening when you're feeling that something is cathartic is you're like, instead of feeling your own feelings, you're letting yourself like process emotions because again, your brain's taking you there of whoever is experiencing that. And so it's kind of like giving yourself a little bit of emotional relief without you actually having to feel your own feelings. So there's a couple different things that can happen there. But definitely if you're somebody who's waking up in the middle of the night, it's because your nervous system is essentially like telling your mind, hey, we can't fully rest. We can't fully like unwind enough because there's still this threat. So that's why, like, I'm somebody who, if I have a trip the next morning, like I have to get up early for like a flight, I won't really sleep the night before because my brain and my body is like, we can't fully rest. We could miss our alarm clock. We could miss our thing. And so that's why that's happening, is that there's usually some other type of stimulants that are preventing your brain and your body from being like, yeah, I'm going to rest.
So I saw today on your Instagram reel that you are like me. You're a big baker.
I am, yes.
So that's how I calm down. My grandma was like that. If I'm up at 2:00 in the morning, can't sleep, there's banana bread for the neighborhood the next morning.
Yes, yep.
Because I need to be doing, like, I don't know why, it's always baking. So what's your go-to 2:00 in the morning baking?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So a lot of times I will be doing a cake or cookies. So I've definitely done like 2 a.m. and then I have cookies for like everyone, and I'm making like cookie boxes. There's something about like using my hands and being disconnected from like social media, from screens. It just allows me to think as I'm creating something. I'm a big like stress baker. So it's usually cookies. I'm venturing into bread, but I've found a little bit of frustration with bread. I'm doing some more research on how to do it better. But
bread's finicky. You need to let it rest. My grandma was that's probably what heaven smells like, I'm sure.
Bread, yes.
Like fresh baked bread.
Yes.
And it was always in her bed because you got to make it warm. So we put her in a room. Yeah. And we're like, what? In this big, huge bowl of dough, right? She's like, leave my dough alone. Oh my God. But like it had blankets over it, over and over it, right? To make
it
rise up.
That makes sense. I think that's probably what it is. It's just my house was too cold for the bread to rise, because that's what I made bagels the other day, and I was like, these are the densest bagels I have ever.
Put them in your bed,
okay,
with a heating pad. I'm
Perfect.
telling you.
Okay, I'll do that.
Or like heat your bed up, put like a hot water bottle in there, and then take it out, and then put your.
Okay.
So everyone's going to go in the comments now and tell us how to make bread, right?
I love it. Yeah, I will take your suggestions because I love bread.
That's
bread
all I remember.
I love that, and it's so beautiful because I have really good memories of my mom baking. She made cookies and desserts for everyone, and so it kind of passed down to me. So
I'm right there with you. I'm not good at. I have a corgi dog, and you'll dig me up 3,000 gazillion years from now, and I will still have corgi hair on me. So I'm scared to bake bread. Yeah. But like anything that goes from like the mix, like the KitchenAid, I'm okay with it. Right. Yeah. But I'm scared to roll out anything because
that makes sense.
No one's gonna want to eat that at all. At all. At least I know.
That's okay.
Right? So, oh my gosh, I loved having you here. So I hope you come back.
Like, oh my gosh, yes.
You're like the best therapist ever. Everyone's
Thank you.
Like,
Thank you.
You're really easy to talk to and funny and down to earth. You speak Heather. I like it.
Thank
you. Where can we find you? Like, tell the people.
Yes.
This woman.
Yes. So you can find me. Instagram's usually the easiest way. Like, slide it into my DMs just to see what offerings I have available, or like my openings and things like that. And my Instagram is at Anna Marie F. Green. And even if you have questions about something, I'm very open to answering questions. My website is annamariegreen.com. And you can also check that out to see, like, if you would want like a mental health clarity reading, or you wanted to look into joining me for therapy, you can do that there as well. But yeah, those are the two main sources. And I'm always, like I said, I'm always open to questions. I'd love to work with you guys. I would love to have you join me in Breaking the Cycle course. It's going to be it's so great. So,
and the great thing about social media, I will say this, is it doesn't matter where you live in the world.
Yes.
Right? Is everything
Yes.
over Zoom? Like, because this
Yes,
is not in
everything's
person, I would assume.
yes.
But
No. Yeah, all of my stuff is over Zoom. I've been looking for an office in Michigan because I would like to start doing some in-person stuff. But even from the time I became a therapist in 2020 in the height of COVID, so I trained and learned how to do all of this stuff virtually, and so it feels very natural. So I work. Yeah, I have clients. I have clients in Canada. I have clients in California. So yeah, I can work with anyone, anywhere.
anybody, anywhere.
So, yeah,
As long as they got
just
something,
fun.
as long as you
Yes.
got internet, we're
Yeah,
all good.
exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. And we were talking about baking. You're also,
Yes.
you say you're doing like,
I
you're selling your baking?
am. Yes, it has been years in the making. My friends are constantly badgering me. They're like, when are you going to make website? When are you going to make business cards? When are you going to, because people have been paying me to bake for them. I always call it my side business
Right.
for years. And I finally launched a website and, got a business name and put an order form up. So it's called, Sugar, Spice, and Magic. And yes,
like it.
thank you. I have lots of big plans for it, and you can order cookies, cakes, and cupcakes. That's what's on there right now, and I'm also and I can ship them. So it's a really fun thing. I just launched the website yesterday and announced it today. So I'm so excited because I love, I said, I love baking.
I'm excited for you.
Thank
And you know what? At the end of the day, I'm a cookie monster. I really am. And cookies
Yes.
really help with therapy.
Yeah, I agree. When I was
love cookies.
Yeah, I'm the same way. When I was younger, my biggest dream, one of my big dreams, so it was to own a bakery, but I also wanted to. I was like, when I have my own place, I will always have a fresh homemade dessert for somebody, so they can come over and they can vent or talk about their day, and they have this comfort food. And I look back and I'm like, of course I'm a therapist. That in and of itself is just here, it's like therapy. Also have a cookie to help you unwind.
If you look through my deep freeze, you would find my grandma's marshmallow dream.
Oh my gosh.
Which is well, I call it marshmallow dream. It's rainbow marshmallows.
Oh, awesome.
Peanut butter, Canadian peanut butter, craft peanut butter, has to be craft.
Okay.
And butterscotch chips, and you melt it all down, and then you make it into a square.
Delicious.
My grandma used to roll it, so it was
cool. So
yeah,
thinner.
That's
cool.
Yeah, but I don't know how she did that, because I was I didn't pay any attention to her. But
that's okay.
That's awesome. There's banana bread.
Oh, I love banana bread.
Armageddon in there.
Love banana
bread. I'm with you, right?
Yeah.
Come over, have some tea, have
a dessert, and tell me about what's going on. Let's chat. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Thank you.
If you can ship to Canada, I'll buy some therapy cookies.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Made with love.
Made with love.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I will. I have a couple friends who are like, can you ship to Canada? And I was like, I will look into it and let you know. So I will let you know.
Where are they in Canada? Maybe we can save on shipping.
Yeah, right? I think one of them is in Calgary, and I think the other one is in between. I think it's closer to Winnipeg, I think.
Oh, no, I'm in Vancouver.
Okay.
Not even in the same province. Not even close. It's probably cheaper to ship from the States than it is Alberta.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. One of those things. Okay. But you can name a cookie after me. You could name it Heather, I don't know, Big H.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cookie therapy.
Yes, I love that. I'll brainstorm it. I'll check. I'll kind of tap into your.
I'm trying to get in on the business. Come on, if you're going to name a crazy cookie after me, Hurricane Heather. Just make a hurricane one.
That's awesome. You're so good at naming them. Mine are. I'm like, here's a blueberry lemon, chocolate chip, Snickers. I'm so uncreative with
I'll
the
send
names.
you a bunch because I got useless information rolling around in my head. If I had smarts, I would have been a therapist, but this is as far as I got.
That's okay.
Well, thank you again so much, my friend. We'll tag everything in the comments, and I really do hope you come back.
Absolutely. I would love to. Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all for this episode of 1% Better. To continue the conversation, head over to our website at www.1percentbetter.ca, where you can access more stories and resources. We'd also love it if you subscribed and left us a review on your favorite podcast platform. And remember, friends, progress takes patience, perspective, and sometimes a little help from people who get it. So be kind to yourself and others as we work to get 1% better every day. We'll see you back here next week.